On Cozy Stories, with apologies to Professor Tolkien. Being a meditation on the value of gentle tales in troubled times, with historical commentary from a remarkable source. A note on the text. In the autumn of 1924, Claude Moreau, an impressionist painter who fled to Provence after a disastrous show in Paris and began chronicling the lives of the mice in his grandmother's garden, wrote a series of letters to his friend and fellow observer of small wonders, Henry Jules Favrot, discussing the nature and necessity for gentle stories in troubled times. When I began composing my own thoughts on the subject a century later, I was unaware of Moreau's correspondence. It was only through an extraordinary set of circumstances involving a very well-read mouse librarian and a particularly preserved teapot that his letters came to my attention. What follows is my essay on cozy storytelling, interwoven with Moreau's remarkably prescient observations from 1924. His comments, preserved with all their original character and insight, suggest that the need for gentle tales transcends time, and that perhaps some truths are best understood through the lens of talking mice and magical teapots. The parallel between his time and ours is striking, as Moreau noted in his first letter to Favrot. My dear friend, the world grows loud with important things. Headlines shout of politics and progress, while even the smallest newspapers thunder about changes that will shake civilization to its roots. Yet here in my grandmother's garden, I observe mice going about their quiet business of keeping stories safe, and I wonder if perhaps these small tales might matter more than all our grand pronouncements. It seems some insights, like the best stories, only grow more relevant with time. On the nature of comfort. For 20 years I've written of war and ruin. My pages ran red with the ink of conflicts, real and imagined conflicts. My characters carved their names in history with steel and sorrow. I knew the weight of mail against weary shoulders, and could describe in exacting detail the way a shield wall breaks under a charge of cavalry. I thought these were the stories that mattered, tales of consequence, of empires rising and falling, of heroes forged in the furnace of conflict. Then, one morning in November of 2024, chaos came not as fiction but as fact. The world's clamor grew too loud, its shadows too deep, its conflicts too immediate. I found myself drowning in a sea of digital fury, each notification a new wave of darkness. And in that moment of overwhelming noise, I made a choice that would change everything. I chose silence. From Moreau's letters, October 1924. The newspapers speak of progress and catastrophe in the same breath, my friend. They paint our age as one of unprecedented change, each headline competing to shout louder than the last. Yet this morning I watched a mouse librarian arrange her books by the quality of silence they contain. Some hold the quiet of early dawn, others the hush of first snowfall. In her careful cataloguing I recognized a profound truth. Sometimes the strongest response to chaos is not to shut back, but to create spaces where gentle thoughts can flourish. Like Moreau's mouse librarian, I began to seek different kinds of stories, not as escape, for no story truly lets us escape reality, but as reminder that reality contains more than shadow. I deleted my social media accounts, silenced my news feeds, and turned instead to the small wonders I had overlooked in my rush to tell weightier tales. The transformation wasn't immediate. Old habits of dramatic tension and violent resolution died hard, but gradually I discovered that comfort isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of something else entirely, something I had forgotten how to see. Moreau again. The mice understand something we have forgotten, Henry. They know that comfort is not a weakness, but a kind of strength. Their stories don't deny the existence of owls or winter storms or the terrible vastness of the world beyond the garden wall. Instead, they celebrate the courage it takes to build something gentle in a world that often is not. Their libraries preserve not just knowledge, but hope, not as fantasy, but as fact, carefully observed and lovingly recorded. Consider the humble teacup waiting on a library shelf. In my former stories, it might have been a prop, perhaps knocked over in someone's haste to grab a weapon or deliver dire news. But look closer, as I learned to do. See how the afternoon light catches its rim, turning ordinary ceramic to gold. Notice the careful arrangement of cushions around it, each one placed just so to encourage long conversations and quiet revelations. Observe how it holds not just tea, but possibility. The chance for friendship to deepen, for stories to be shared, for comfort to be both given and received. This is not lesser magic than the clash of armies or the fall of empires. It is not retreat from reality, but deeper engagement with it. For in learning to see these small wonders, we remember that the world contains more than conflict, that alongside every headline screaming chaos, there are countless quiet moments of connection and grace. In his letter of October 1924, Moreau wrote, "Yesterday I overheard a young mouse asking why they keep such careful records of ordinary days. The librarian's answer struck me to my core. 'Because, my dear,' she said, 'ordinary days are where we learn how to live. The great adventures may show us how to be heroes, but these quiet moments teach us how to be mice.' Perhaps this, then, is the true nature of comfort in stories, not to shield us from life's storms, but to help us remember who we are between them. The path from blood and thunder to small wonders is not a retreat, but an advance. Not away from truth, but toward a different kind of truth. It requires us to look more closely, to pay attention to details we might once have overlooked, to find story and significance in moments we might once have dismissed as too small to matter. In the end, choosing comfort over chaos doesn't mean choosing blindness over sight. It means learning to see with new eyes, to value different kinds of courage, to recognize that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to create something gentle in a world that has forgotten how. Marginal note from Moreau, found pressed between pages.
The mice have a saying, "The quietest stories echo longest." Perhaps this is what we forget in our rush to make noise. That comfort, like dawn, comes not with a shout, but with gradual illumination, changing everything it touches.
The courage of gentleness. It takes a peculiar kind of courage to write of small things, in an age that demands grandeur, not just the courage to risk dismissal from those who think only epics matter, but the courage to look closely at what most overlook, to suggest that a mouse librarian's careful organization of dewdrop-pressed memories might matter as much as a king's great deeds. From Moreau's Letters, November 1924.
The critics demand significant works, Henry. Stories that shake foundations and topple institutions. They speak of urgent narratives and vital perspectives, yet this morning I watched a young mouse spend 3 hours perfecting the angle at which light falls on her grandmother's memory jars. There was something profound in her dedication to this tiny task, something the critics might call insignificant, but which seemed to me to contain all the urgency of dawn breaking.
This, perhaps, is the first lesson in the courage of writing gently, learning to trust that small moments carry their own weight, that a carefully brewed pot of tea can hold as much truth as a battlefield, that friendship tested by daily life can prove as compelling as friendship forged in combat. The cynics will say such stories lack consequence. They will dismiss tales of talking mice and magical teapots as mere whimsy, forgetting that whimsy, too, has purpose. For in teaching us to see magic in small things, these stories help us remember how to see magic at all. Moreau observes,
The garden mice keep a peculiar kind of historical record, not of battles won or territories gained, but of moments when kindness changed the course of events. They document the first time a spider taught a mouse to read starlight, when the frost spirits learned to dance with children, how a young poet found her voice in morning dew. Their archives suggest that gentleness, properly applied, can reshape the world as surely as any revolution.
This reshaping requires its own kind of valor. To write of small wonders means resisting the constant urge to raise the stakes, to make things more dramatic, more violent, more significant. It means trusting that readers will find significance in quiet moments, that they too hunger for stories that remind them how to breathe, how to notice, how to be still in a world of constant motion. In my years of writing Blood and Thunder, I learned every trick of tension, how to tighten the screws of conflict, how to drive characters to their breaking points, how to make readers hold their breath in anticipation of the next catastrophe. But writing gently demands different skills. How to make readers exhale, how to create space for wonder, how to craft moments of peace that feel earned rather than empty.
The mice,
Moreau wrote in late November,
understand something about courage that we have forgotten. Their stories celebrate not just those who face danger, but those who chose to remain kind in a dangerous world. They honor not just the warriors, but the ones who maintain libraries and plant gardens and preserve memories, believing that beauty matters, even, perhaps especially, when shadows loom.
This is not courage that announces itself with trumpets. It's the quiet courage of showing up day after day to 10 small magics. The courage to suggest that perhaps the world doesn't need another story about how things fall apart, but rather a gentle reminder of how they come together. It's the courage to write scenes where nothing explodes, where no one draws a sword, where the most dramatic moment might be a mouse adjusting his spectacles to better read the stories written in morning dew. The courage to trust that such moments, properly rendered, can hold readers as surely as any chase or battle. Marginal note from Moreau, found tucked into the corner of a page.
Today, I watched a young mouse rescue a spider's egg sac from winter frost. She spent hours warming it with her own body heat, whispering stories to help the spiderlings dream of spring. The other mice called her brave, not because she faced danger, but because she chose to be gentle in a moment when gentleness required more courage than combat.
Perhaps this is the truest courage in writing gently, daring to suggest that comfort is not weakness, that kindness is not naivete, that finding wonder in ordinary moments is not escape, but engagement with life's deepest truths. It's the courage to write stories that heal rather than wound, that illuminate rather than dazzle, that remind us how to hope in a world that often seems hopeless. Final note from Moreau on courage.
The mice have a ceremony for their young writers. They take them to the highest point in the garden at dawn and ask them to describe not the vast world they see, but the smallest detail that catches their eye. For, they say, it takes more courage to celebrate what is small and precious than to shout about what is vast and overwhelming. Perhaps we humans could learn from this.